They keep trying to recreate the SP. See the last one drop from Amber 4-3. The second one hits and now it's 2 sticks, but the screen don't fit, so tell them call me. I'ma tell them that deep what I crave is an upgrade clone just like the GBA. A clean new shell, the buttons brand new. Tell me why the thumbsticks are on a 3-2.
The clamshell is absolutely back in style. If you've peeked into the retro handheld scene at all lately, you've probably realized by now that we are swimming in hinge-based designs at this point. And more often than not, these companies now are starting to clone one of the most legendary designs of all time when it comes to a clamshell, and that is the GBA SP. And these companies keep trying to clone the GBA SP, but they're just getting something horribly wrong every time. There's always an issue. Either the hinge doesn't work, the layout isn't really ideal, we've got awkward ergonomics. There's usually one little roadblock that most people, including myself, just can't get over. And now we've got a brand new challenger entering the ring, and this one is from Anbernic. It's the RG34XX SP, which, dude, every time I say these names, I feel like I'm going more and more insane. This is a direct follow-up to their last model, the RG35XX SP, and what's different about this one is that it's even more closely resembling the original GBA SP, which gives me hope because now we can ask the question, is this finally the chosen one, the model, the device that we've been waiting for to officially claim the GBA SP form factor and bring that design back into the modern era? And as somebody who grew up with the GBA SP, I have high expectations that we now have, hopefully, the official model that can bring that nostalgia back into my hands. This device was not sent out to me, and including shipping and all the taxes and everything, I did end up spending around $80 for this little guy, and that's pretty pricey, to be honest with you. I loved the 35XX SP, and while it is a bigger form factor and might not exactly resemble the SP that I grew up with, I thought this was like a really cool, fun, modern take that felt more comfortable in bigger hands and had just a nicer screen overall. But to my surprise, this newer model from Anbernic didn't feel too tiny in comparison. This one is smaller and does try to resemble the original SP a lot more. I mean, there's barely any difference in the dimensions. It's just slightly thicker than the GBA SP, but for the most part, if you're trying to compare them side to side and you just give it a quick glance, you'd probably think they are the exact same dimensions. It does strike a really good balance between pocketability here and also comfortability with your hands. It's not the most comfortable thing, but the fact that it's so small means you can take it literally anywhere you want and still be able to play some sick retro games. I did really like the plastic on this black model. I don't notice too many fingerprints smudging all over the place, and I just think that overall, in the handheld space, these companies have been figuring out which type of plastic works best for each model, and it doesn't feel hollow at all. Just a solid, compact little device that does make me feel like it's just another GBA SP. That is, until you decide to open this thing up and you just see two massive nipples staring into your face. One of the biggest changes that Anbernic are throwing onto this device are the two thumbsticks at the bottom, and it definitely resembles the Miyoo Flip that came out just a few months ago that was pretty popular and pretty high in demand initially. I feel like a lot of people were really excited about that model, and they enjoyed the fact that it did have thumbsticks, so Anbernic said, okay, you know what, I'm basically gonna copy that design and see if we can do it better. And one of the holes that Anbernic managed to patch on that design for the Miyoo Flip was the hinge. People contacted Miyoo about the broken hinge, and then Miyoo supposedly responded with this video. This is like the goofiest response I've ever seen to somebody or a customer who has a broken device. Like, how does this prove anything? I don't know. This is just so dumb, but anyway. I can't speak for every single device out there, but the one I've got in my hands right now feels good. It's satisfying to open and close like a hinge should be. And overall, I think Anbernic really killed this thing. They did a great job on this aspect of the build quality, which is arguably one of the most important factors factors going into building and recreating the SP. It also opens up to the exact same angle as the originals. So Anbernic, I mean, we've got a good hinge, unlike maybe other devices out there on the planet. The face buttons on this thing are a huge plus and a huge step up in comparison to the 3.5 XXSP that I do own right now. The original model had the clickiest buttons known to man, and I know that Anbernic did end up changing and updating things midway through, so I think the newer models for the 3.5 do sound and feel better, but right now I've got the older model, and this thing is so loud and so clunky sounding. They're not my favorite front-facing buttons. I usually prefer the Retroid D-pad and face buttons. Personally, I just think that those are the best feeling in this space, but they still definitely hit a high standard on this device. For the most part, the thumbsticks feel all right, I guess. I don't know. I'm personally not a fan of these things. I think they feel really cheap, and I guess at this price point, I'm not really too surprised and don't expect much, but they feel like if you were to tell me that they were going to break 6 months from now, I really wouldn't put it past you. But what Anbernic really knocked out of the park on this new SP clone is the dang screen. The screen on this actually rivals the Trim UI brick in my opinion, and it's so vibrant, it gets a lot brighter, the saturation is much better, and then I compared it as well to the RG35 XXSP, which like I said came out last year from Anbernic, and it is a night and day difference. I didn't even really understand how poor quality a screen we got in the 3.5 until I decided to put these side to side. It's just punchier, it looks better, playing games on it is a much more enjoyable experience, and Anbernic did a great job choosing the screen for this SP lookalike. And while we're comparing these two screens, there is one major difference that really does set these two apart, and that is the screen resolution and ratio. The 3.5 has a 4:3 aspect ratio. Meanwhile, this newer device has a 3:2 aspect ratio. And this is where there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of mixed opinions on which is more ideal and why Anbernic chose to go with a 3:2 versus a 4:3. 4:3 screens are usually acclaimed as one of the better sweet spot aspect ratios to have for any type of retro handheld, just because it can play and cast such a wide net for so many different retro systems like the N64, the Dreamcast, you've got PS1, you can make SNES look pretty great on here, and other systems do scale somewhat properly on the 4:3 screens. Meanwhile, the 3:2 is much more specific. This is the exact aspect ratio for the GBA SP, which makes sense now, because if we're gonna get a clone of the GBA SP, you would want the aspect ratio to be the exact same. But here's the weird thing. We've got thumbsticks on the model that I'm guessing most people would ideally only play GBA games on, and then we don't have thumbsticks on the bigger model with the 4:3 aspect ratio that would be much better and more well suited for thumbsticks. And I think that Anbernic, if they were going to release this thing, should have just kept the 4:3 aspect ratio then, if they were going to throw the nipples on it. A big problem a lot of people had for the 3.5 XXSP was that it actually wasn't that great for GBA emulation. It didn't perfectly scale that 3:2 gameplay, so instead you had to add like this GBA overlay and then add shaders to make it look better, but that's not the case now on the newer model. This one makes all of your GBA games look absolutely brand new. It puts a nice new polish on top of it. Under the hood, we've got the exact same H700 chipset that we have seen across multiple Anbernic devices at this point, but that's actually a pretty good thing, especially for one where you don't need too much power, because now we've got options for custom firmware. If you haven't tapped into this, please install some custom firmware on your devices. It's really not that hard, and it elevates everything. If you get Nully, if you get MinUI, MUOS, Rocknix, there's just so many great options out there to bring you a better experience on these things. But if you do want to stick with stock OS, you could actually get away with it with the Anbernic devices. I feel like Anbernic stock firmware isn't too bad, and it's relatively plug and play. It's not the greatest experience. I have had some weird like hiccups where, for instance, my inputs won't get recognized at the main menu system, or just some weird bugs left and right that kind of show up out of nowhere. But overall, I think that the experience is is fine if you really don't want to use custom firmware. I don't know where they get their ROMs, and I also don't know where you get your ROMs. I'm not going to tell you where I get my ROMs because, you know, the performance is literally as you expect. It's solid for PS1, Dreamcast, some N64, but let's be real, this thing lives and thrives on things like GBA or SNES or Game Boy and Game Boy Color. That's really where things shine for it, but like I said earlier with the 3x2 screen, I think you're just gonna only really want to play GBA games on this thing. The screen's brighter, the contrast is there, it's perfectly scaled up. Everything is kind of hitting all the boxes right now for the ideal way to play Game Boy Advance games in an SP form factor. And you can play other games that do require the thumbsticks on the bottom, but like, it's just, I don't want to use them. And it's dumb to complain about the thumbsticks because those are just literally extra. So we're getting more functionality out of our purchase, which I think is a good thing. But for me and my limited perspective, I really would prefer them just to be gone, and it would just be a clean GBA experience. It does have HDMI out, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and also a headphone jack on the bottom, which some other companies have started removing lately. So it's nice to see Anbernic still giving some love to the headphone jack. All in all, I don't really have much to complain about with this new Anbernic device. This is a one-for-one, almost direct copy of the SP, and it's just upgrading everything. But there's plenty of other options out there on the market. So is this really the go-to, the chosen one that you should pick up? There is the Miyoo Flip that Anbernic did take a lot of inspiration for when it comes to this design. However, that one had way more issues out the box. Some people were struggling with the hinge in particular, and that really just spooked so many people, myself included. I did not end up picking up a Miyoo Flip. I also don't like the fact that the Miyoo Flip hinge design is not the same as the GBA SP that it's trying to copy. It makes it look more like just some random third-party knockoff because the hinge looks different. And that's super niche and super nitpicky, but for me, in my eyes, it does bug me. There's also that Powkiddy V90, which has been out for a while and is relatively a budget-friendly option. I think that one could probably set you back only $40, which is kind of a steal if you're trying to stay on the cheaper side of things. But you get what you pay for. That one is a little bit more cheap feeling and also a lot smaller than the GBA SP. So if you've got like normal sized hands or you're just an adult, I think that that device is not going to be comfortable. And then you've got the original Anbernic 35XX SP, which I think of all the models and all the clones out there that you're going to put this one up against, the 35 gives it a run for its money just because it's a little bit bigger, slightly more comfortable, and has a 4:3 aspect ratio. The newer models also have better buttons than the one that I have here. These ones are super loud, but from what I'm aware of and what I've been told and what I've seen, the newer models do ship out with quieter, better tactile feeling buttons. In this situation, you kind of got to pick your poison. You can go for the 4:3 screen without any thumbsticks, and you're forced to use a D-pad on things that would usually require a thumbstick. Or you could go for the 3x2 screen, which has a thumbstick, but because it's a 3x2 screen, it's not going to be the best looking for those systems that would even need a thumbstick. Because we're just going back to the thumbstick and the nipple problem, bro. Why does it have nipples? Why? It just doesn't make sense to my brain. It's so weird. I know we're getting extra functionality, and like I guess it's better than nothing, but I would just want them gone. I want them gone, and I want a 4x3 system with actual thumbsticks that resembles the original 3.5 because I think that makes more sense. But then, if that does happen, then we're just back in the rabbit hole of buying more devices. I feel like these companies just continue to say, hey, we're not going to make the perfect device yet. We want your money. We want you to not be completely satisfied. So let's just throw you something a little bit off, something a little bit weird so that you can keep buying all of our new models that we release. But if the nipples don't bug you and you don't really care, then I do think that this is one of the best, if not the best model that we've gotten that will give you an ideal GBA SP experience. It's got a great screen. The forehead really isn't that big of a deal to me. The buttons feels fantastic, at least the front-facing ones. And overall, you should have a great time on this thing. As a clamshell kid, I'm just happy to see all of the love lately for these Hinge-based devices. I'm so happy, even though I'm probably spending way too much money on like the exact same device. And at the end of the day, you know, the best handheld you have is probably the one that you already own. I wouldn't say it's the official model yet though. I'm still waiting for the exact ideal SP clone. I don't think we're there yet. We're close enough, but for my picky self, we haven't reached that point yet. But that's gonna do it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. As always, I do make music. The link is in the description, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video. See you later.
Too much, don't say too much. You tryna make plans with a plastic touch. I'ma hit you right back with a peace sign. I'm a sucker for the short, not a long time. Never drop plan A for the beat line. Even if your name etched on a street sign. I'ma hit